Hello and welcome to Prairie Pulse. Joining us today on the show is Kirsten Diedrich, the North Dakota Board of Higher Education and chair. And Kirsten, thanks so much for joining us today. Sorry I couldn't get all that out there. But as we get started today, tell the folks a little bit about yourself and your background and where you're from.
Absolutely. I was born and raised in Fargo, North Dakota on the north side. I graduated from Fargo North, went up to UND for 3 years of my education, ended up at NDSU, finished off there, where I eventually completed my PhD from NDSU.
Okay. Well, now, how did you get involved with the Board of Higher Education?
You know, it's interesting. I was an adjunct professor and became an assistant professor at Concordia College, where I taught biology for about 15 years. And I woke up one morning and read the newspaper, and I saw that an acquaintance of mine was done on the State Board of Higher Education. And I turned to my husband and I said, you know what? I love education. I have a passion for this. I think I want to do this. And his reaction was, you have no idea what you're getting into. And I didn't know what I was getting into, but it's been a fantastic opportunity, and I've learned so much, and I think we're doing great things.
Okay. Well, with that said, how long have you been on the board now?
I'm in my 5th year.
Okay, in your 5th year. So then tell the folks out there, how's the university board appointed and how does it operate?
Okay. So when we have openings on the board, we make an application there's a committee in Bismarck that goes through these applications. They select 3 people for one position, and they send those 3 names to the governor, and then the governor makes the appointment.
Okay, so a governor appointed, but then, so how does it operate as a body?
Okay, we are actually a governing board, not a managing board, and so we should be looking at the policy level for our institutions of higher education and not getting into the minutia at all. So we are definitely a governing board. We have 8 voting members, and we also have 2 advisors. One is a faculty advisor and the other is a staff advisor, but they're non-voting. And North Dakota is also unique in that we have a student who is a voting member, where some of these other boards do not have the student vote, and they act as an advisor instead. So I think we have everything covered. We get some good advice from both the faculty, the staff, and the students, and I think it works really well.
Well, is the student part of the 8?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, so understand you've had some successes over the last couple of years. Can you tell us about some of those?
Yes, we're very excited. Well, first of all, the last session was one of our largest funding appropriations yet. We have this new medical school that's going up at UND, and we're very excited about that. The legislature has been very gracious and has funded higher education in North Dakota better than any other state, except maybe Alaska. And so we're pleased with that, because it helps us keep the cost of tuition down if the appropriate dollars come through. We also had some little bumps along the way that we survived. We had a complaint to the Higher Learning Commission, and we addressed that issue and came through with flying colors. We're very pleased with that. And then we also had this vote in November, and the public decided to support higher education. We're very pleased with that also. And on top of all this, we have a brand new strategic plan. And it's been a number of years since we put together a new strategic plan, and this is very exciting. We had input from across the state. We hired Connie Spritznatic to organize this, and she had listening groups and input from all over, and we came up with a fantastic strategic plan that addresses the issues that need to be addressed in North Dakota.
Okay. Well, we're definitely going to be asking you more questions about some of those things that you just mentioned, but maybe you said it's a new strategic plan, so it has been adopted.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
I certainly will, and I apologize. I'm going to have to look at some of my notes here so that I don't...
Well, it's new.
It's brand new. There is actually 4 goals. The first one is to deliver the degrees that are the best in the nation. And we want them to have a value. So it's not just that we have good degrees, but they have to be a valuable degree. So within that goal, then, we have 3 strategies. And the first strategy is to ensure that the price to attend is competitive. And then within there, we have some measurable outcomes. So for instance, we have, tuition and fees at or below the regional averages, easy to understand tuition model, and that we keep that net price for the low income at or below the regional average as well. We also want to standardize our fees, which in the past was very confusing. A student would get to campus and they know what the tuition is, and then all of a sudden they would get these bills where there are added fees, and we want to make sure that's all standardized and very transparent. So we want them to be in consistent categories. So if you have a housing fee or a parking fee or activity fee, it's the same across the system. And so we want to improve our oversight over that. And then increase our use of open resources. You may have heard during the last session that the students came forward and requested that we make a better effort to have open resources in the classroom to cut down their cost for their textbooks. And so we are going to work on that with our faculty members and say, you know, we're not telling you which textbook to use, but if you have an opportunity to use an open resource, please do so to keep that cost down. So that was our first goal. And our second goal is to provide programs people want where and when they need them. So these strategies are to ensure that the programs are relevant, valuable, and timely. So we want to increase the degrees awarded that fit the campus mission, but also the state's greatest needs. And by doing that, we would be increasing our workforce training. We have heard from businesses across the state that we just don't have enough people to even fill the jobs. And so we want to meet North Dakota's workforce needs through recruitment. Now, that recruitment can be North Dakota students. I believe there was just a study done showing that the North Dakota numbers are going down that are enrolled in our institutions, but that's partly because the number of graduating students in North Dakota is going down. However, we expect a bubble to come up in 2018. So we need some non-residents to come in and fill these positions. And then we also want to increase the percentage of the North Dakota adults that have at least an associate's degree. And then expand on our non-traditional delivery methods, because not everybody is going to be able to go in and sit in a classroom. We need to have the online or the blended classrooms available. The third goal is to equip students for success. And strategies here are to improve the admission standards or increase them. Now, we had quite a bit of debate over that because our research institutions have always been, they're not open enrollment, but they have possibly accepted some students that might not succeed. Yet in North Dakota, access to education has always been very important, and so there's a little debate over whether or not we are decreasing access by increasing admission standards in some of our schools. But we've decided that we are going to set slightly higher standards on the GPA and ACT starting in the fall of 2016. But by the fall of 2018, it should be implemented across the system. In the research schools, we want to increase the core courses that students need from 13 to 15 by the fall of 2018. And of course, our community colleges will still stay at an open enrollment. And then increase attainment rates. This is also an area where we know that we need to get better. We want to increase our graduation rates and also our retention rates. And then improve registering, advising, and transferring of students so that we can increase the percentage of transfers who actually complete their degrees. So now, this is coming, I'll have one more goal at the end, but this is coming from the board level. But I want you to know that this is not telling the institutions how to do everything. This is telling, this is what we want to see. And then the institutions will come up with their own strategic plans on how to fulfill these goals. So we're not managing, we're just saying this is what we want to see in the future. And the fourth goal is to really maximize the strength of a unified system. We have 11 institutions across the state. We are a system, and we want to operate as a system. In the past, they were pretty autonomous. Okay? But what we are seeing is that we could maximize our strengths by doing certain things so that we don't have duplication of services at some institutions or majors and that type of thing, which we're already doing. But the strategy is to increase system academic collaboration. And so you could have a student at Bismarck State that is taking classes at NDSU and make it as seamless as possible and easy as possible for them to be able to collaborate, or have part of a degree taken at one institution and then they finish off that degree at another institution. And then creating some efficiencies by having shared programs and services. You know, out in the western part of the state, some of our institutions have had quite a turnover of the number of their employees. And so when they're trying to operate, say, their payroll services, there's such a turnover that's very difficult for them. Well, some of the larger institutions are coming in and they're going to help them with that. And so if we could have some shared services, it would also save on money, but it also helps the institution out and the students. And then strengthen the ability to respond to the changing needs. Okay? Well, this is something that the board needs to work on because we need to streamline our policies. And we're looking into that right now. We have a lot of policies, and so we are going through them step by step to see what can we streamline so that we can change quicker to the needs in North Dakota. And then enhance the research reputation. And so that annual improvement there is they're looking at, you know, research and development expenditures, and the science and engineering research staff, and then the number of doctoral students that they will have. So that's our goals for our strategic plan for the next couple of years, 5 years, and we're so excited about it. And what's even better is you can monitor, the public can monitor exactly how we're doing on these goals. We have a dashboard set up on our website that you can just click on our goal and look at the outcomes and see how we're doing. And so we're being as transparent as we can to everybody in the state of North Dakota.
Okay. Well, now, so you've got your strategic plan in place. Now, you probably need a new leader, or you got an interim chancellor, so you're on a search for a new university chancellor. Can you tell us about that?
Yes. Well, first of all, we have had a fantastic interim chancellor. Dr. Scogan has led us through some difficult times and has been a fantastic leader and a joy to work with. I really do hate to see him go, but yet Bismarck State is looking forward to having him back again, and I understand that very much. So we have started our search, the preliminary portion of it. We hired our search consultants. We went with the Association of Governing Boards consulting firm, and we have met with them, and we're putting together kind of the advertisement, you know, and what are the qualifications that we want in our next chancellor. But before we did that, we had listening sessions across the state. So board members went out to the different campuses, and we had an open forum where the public and oftentimes the university personnel would come and give us their feedback. It was listening only. We just sat there and said, okay, what do you see are the qualifications that we need in our next chancellor? And so we've compiled that, and we're working on it.
Well, with that said, with the
Yes.
history of the last couple of chancellors, what are the qualities you're looking for this time?
Yeah. Well, what we're seeing mainly is a non-top-down administrator, somebody that works collaboratively and builds momentum from within and not top-down. Somebody who can work with the legislature, somebody who's able to work with the presidents and the board and the public. You know, I think our past chancellor, where we had the controversy, had some wonderful ideas and just perhaps moved a little too quickly than we are ready for. And I've oftentimes said that we wanted a change, but we did a full change when we probably should have just gone about halfway and slowed it up a little bit. So I'm very confident that we'll find the right chancellor this time around. We have enough input and we'll get everybody on board.
Okay. Well, in November, there was a measure on the ballot
Yes.
that would have impacted higher education. Can you explain to the viewers what that was about and why it was on the ballot?
Yes. Well, I don't exactly know why it was on the ballot. From what I've heard is there were some frustrations. And this has been building for a number of years, where some people feel as though perhaps an 8-member board that is voluntary is not engaged enough to be able to handle this budget that we have for 11 institutions. And they were maybe a little frustrated with what was happening with that past chancellor, and it just kind of came to a head during this last session. The concerns with that were, you need, according to the Higher Learning Commission, you need to have a autonomous board. Therefore, governing boards across the United States are non-paid volunteers, because they bring you that autonomy. If their livelihood does not depend on their paycheck, they're going to do what they think is right for the higher education institutions, not what's going to allow them to keep their job. So the Higher Learning Commission contacted us saying we have some concerns about this and your accreditation if this vote should go through, because you would have 3 paid appointed commissioners instead. The measure also would have removed kind of the names of the institutions. And so it said that there would still be institutions of higher education within those locations, but it didn't exactly say what they would be. And when I toured some of the smaller institutions, there was concern that they could maybe become a satellite of another institution or something like that. And so there were more questions than answers in that measure, and I think the people realized that our institutions are doing a great job. Why mess with something that's actually working?
Okay. Well, the legislative session's beginning now, and so what are some of the things that the university system budget is asking for, and are you expecting pushback with any of this?
You know what? I haven't heard about what the pushback will be yet. I think that we have talked with a lot of legislators and a lot of business leaders, so that we know what they want. One of our priorities is to maintain affordability. The board had actually asked to have a tuition freeze at all campuses, and even though our 2 research schools and our 4 baccalaureate schools are currently under the cost of our regional competition, as you might say, our 2-year schools are still a little bit above. Now, I believe there's just a report saying that Bismarck State College is below the national, which is great, but we want to get all the other 2-year schools and maintain that affordability. We also want to see an increase in financial aid. And then, as I mentioned earlier, this open educational resources, we really want to help the faculty, give them some funding so that they can kind of experiment and start looking into these different options that they have. We also need to improve our retention and completion. And so we ask for some funding to implement what's called predictive analytics reporting. And it's called PAR. And we had an experiment with that up at Grand Forks. So UND has actually worked with it. And what the predictive analytics reporting does is it's kind of like an early alert system. And it also uses data. And so you say, okay, now if this student received a C in their intro class, what's the probability that they're going to do okay in the next level? Okay. Well, this PAR, this predictive analytic reporting, allows us to do that. So if we implement this, an advisor can talk to their student and say, okay, well, the probability of you doing this is not going to be very good because of how you did in this one. Maybe we should move you in another direction. And so that will help us with our retention and completion, because if students are in the wrong course, it's very difficult for them to be successful. So we want to make sure that they're where they should be. We also have a system priority to protect health, safety, and security. So some of these fit into our capital projects requests. So, for instance, Valley City, the heating plant needs some work. Dunbar Hall at NDSU is in pretty tough shape. We have the Science Center, and we have some things that have to be done at the airport up in Grand Forks. We're also looking into the mental health and campus security, emergency and operations, and then our IT security and upgrades. Our fourth priority is to address capital and program needs that will ensure accreditation continuation and the workforce needs. So we had a number of these. The first one was to complete the UND Medical School, which is really a carryover from the last session. And then a health workforce initiative so that we can recruit allied health and medical. We have a lot of job openings in the state of North Dakota in the medical field. And then for NDSU, we put in $27 million in engineering for phase 1 of a capital project. And then NDSCS is looking into a Fargo expansion where they would like to have a bigger presence here in Fargo to help fulfill the workforce needs in North Dakota. And also Minot State was looking at the technical education aspect too, which they have not done in the past. And then the managing deferred maintenance. We are going through a master plan, and we've had some consultants come in looking at what kind of deferred maintenance do we have on these campuses. And it was an eye-opener. We knew we had some issues, but it was almost 800 million or a little over 800 million in deferred maintenance needs on our campuses. Now, I do want to say that they didn't check every building. You know, they did a sampling of the buildings and then had to take that and say, okay, it looks like this is where you're at at your institutions of higher education. But that was only phase 1. We have phase 2 and phase 3 that we need to address, and that is the space and classroom utilization. So it may be that you need a new, if you need a new science building, well, let's see what you're doing with the other buildings that you have on campus. Are you utilizing those spaces as well as you possibly could? Or do you really need a new building? And so we are continuing with that. And then we asked for a deferred maintenance pool so we can start building up some monies so that we can allocate that out to the campuses and see if we can put a dent in that high item of 800 million in deferred maintenance.
Okay. Well, with all this said, why do you think there's been sort of an uneasy and sometimes even hostile environment between the legislature and higher ed?
Yeah. Do you know what? I think that having a little bit of that conflict is a good thing. I think we're going to get the best product out of it if you have forces that are really digging down deep to see what's going on. Now, it's a lot of money, and I understand that. And I feel that our institutions are using their money wisely. It's the appropriated funds only covers about 1/3 of the cost to actually educate a student. And so we have 1/3 coming from the legislature and 1/3 from tuition, and then we have another 1/3 that comes from grants and contracts. It's approximately, but the legislature wants to make sure that 1/3, those millions of dollars, is used appropriately. And I think maybe we just have to be better at communicating exactly what we're doing and work on that so that they see that we are using the money wisely.
Okay, we're going to run out of time here pretty quick, but does North Dakota have too many universities, or in your opinion, are you comfortable with the number?
Yeah, well, I'm comfortable with the number. That's a personal opinion on that. And as far as a board member, when we take our oath, we actually say that we are here to support the 11 institutions of higher education, and that's our job.
Okay. That said, what's the relationship between the board and all the university presidents?
I think it's very good. It is. We are currently working on a roles and responsibilities document so that we know exactly what the role of the president, the board, and the chancellor is. And this task force has the president's board members and the chancellor participating, and it's been a wonderful experience. Everybody's getting along. They feel free to say what they want to say, and I think we're going to come to a final agreement to say, this is your job, this is our job, and then we're going to let you go.
Well, if people want more information or want to find out more about things, where can they go? Who can they contact?
Yeah, you know what? We do have a website that you can go to, and also you can contact the North Dakota University System, and the woman, Christy, who manages the office there, will direct your call where it need be.
Well, okay. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Well, that's all we have on Prairie Pulse this week, and as always, thanks for watching.